What's going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to Logicast, the Logical Gamers podcast. It's your boy Esoteric, and I'm here today with Blanca Kong, Gunna Eos, and Hado Wolf. And tonight, we have an article that pretty much talks about a combination of ownership and censorship, and why, I will get to at a later time why I think ownership is very beneficial, and I think the article will exemplify that as well. So we have an article here from Kotaku that is titled Wuchang Fallen Feathers Fans Celebrate Owning the Disc After Controversial Update Censors the Game. Right, and this is written by Ethan Gash. Hopefully I didn't butcher your last name, Ethan. And it was published on August 14th, 2025. So I'm just going to go along and read the article here. Wuchang Fallen Feathers has been called a lot of things. Soul slop, gooner bait, a surprisingly good game. You can now add censored to the list after a recent 1.5 update made controversial changes to the game, seemingly to quell a backlash from some fans in China. A few diehard fans are now relieved they bought the game on disc, knowing they can always access the original version of the action game that released last month. The newest patch arrived earlier this week and made a bunch of changes, most of which seemed innocuous enough. Some were enthusiastically welcome, like the sped up healing animation, which Gunnar did mention prior to the recording of this session, the ability to cancel out of a recovery animation by dodging, and improved iframes when recovering from getting knocked down. Other changes were more ominous than they first appeared. Adding dialogues for some NPCs to complete some plots. Read one bullet point. We will further optimize the exhaustion animations in the future to improve the plot performance. Alright, moving along. What was developer Lindsay talking about? It soon became clear, as shared on social media by Souls aficionado and early advocate for Wuchang, Lance McDonald. What they mean is they made it so you can no longer kill any historical significant bosses or NPCs, and instead they just get exhausted and relax after the fight and talk to you. LMAO, or also laughing my ass off. Historical figures that previously died within the fiction of the game, like Lu Wenshu, Lu Shengyan, and Emperor Shangzhen, now live on. Right? And now we have a photo of a conversation that is on Twitter, aka X. Daniel Camillo states, "Yep, the game isn't officially released in China. It doesn't have a publishing license. Too much of its content goes against what's allowed to be depicted in games in China anyway. This is really weird that the devs would just falter like this to vocal minorities." To which Lance McDonald replied, "People got mad you can kill the late stage Ming Dynasty Dragon Emperor in game because he was literally dead by this point in history, and you kill a horrific zombie version of him to stop his resurrection. Anyone offended by this is wild, and having him survive now ruins the plot." Okay, so I think I kind of got it reversed. Lance McDonald made that statement, to which Daniel Camillo replied. Guys in the chat or in the comments, definitely correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't really use X or Twitter like that. So apologies if I got that order wrong. Anyways, moving forward, McDonald continued, like actual censorship due to pressure from Chinese players who were upset about being able to kill historically significant characters from the end of the Ming Dynasty. Crazy to see it. Players are reporting that the pray gesture has been removed that you previously learned from the Portuguese Christian character in the game. A series of Ming soldiers in Chapter 4 have also been changed to not fight the player, making a previously challenging section now a breeze to get through. Combined with some more general nerfs to enemy armor and various boss fights, players have been revolting against patch 1.5 on Steam and Reddit, where some have accused the Wuchang subreddit mods of deleting complaints. After 80 hours on Steam, I pulled the trigger for console, one fan wrote. Long live Wuchang 1.0. Some players are currently trying to roll back updates on Steam by editing files. Not everyone's raging against the latest update as performance continues slowly but surely to improve on PC. Does that mean Wuchang's Steam review rating is finally recovering? Not quite. Complaints of frame rate crashes have been replaced by review bombing over the alleged censorship. We definitely spoke about review bombing in previous topics. Um, for its part, Lindsay hasn't said why it changed Wuchang's story. Update 1.5 went live on PS5 and Xbox Series XS earlier today. All right, so I read quite a lot there, gentlemen. Would anybody want to chime in on their thoughts about this article?
Yeah, I'll go first. This kind of wasn't the censorship that I was expecting when you brought this up. I figured it was going to be kind of like the censorship we've all come to expect when these type of games are released in the West, especially um these Chinese games, which are becoming not only Chinese, North Korea. They're not playing much of anything. South Korean games like Stellar Blade, and I figured it would be something along the lines of the female sex appeal censorship, like covering up some side boob, covering up some butt showing. That's where I figured we were going. I'm like, oh, this is a tale as old as time. Um, but this is a different kind of censorship, and I think it has more to do with the Chinese population and how they view their culture, especially how they view their culture being represented in the West. So I didn't know that this game wasn't in China. I figured it's a Chinese company, Chinese made game, that this would be in China and kind of be a big thing. We saw that with Wukong. When that came out, that was a big deal in China. That was pushed by the Chinese government. Hell, even office workers in China were given copies of the game and time off, which is not a thing in China, not really a thing. Um, to play this game. So it was like a cultural milestone for them, and it was a major cultural export to the rest of the world. That's not the case with Wuchang. I didn't know that. For you guys in the group and any viewers knowing, China has very strict things when it comes to their video games of what they're allowed to depict. So one that I find interesting is that they have a cultural thing with skeletons. That's why you will never fight skeletons in a Chinese video game. And certain games that have gone to China that have skeletons in them have had to be modified or removed in some aspects because you just cannot depict skeletons in Chinese media. I don't really know the cultural reason why, but it's a thing. So like a prime
Okay.
example is Rainbow Six Siege. It is in China, and there was a stage that took place in like a biker gang bar, and it had like a skeleton flag. They had to remove the skeleton because it just went against cultural norms in China. So TLDR, China has very weird cultural standards that have to be enforced. So when I played Wu Chang, I was like, "There's no way this game can be in China, right?" Lo and behold, it's not. So, but yeah, this is not the censorship that I thought was going to happen. I think it is kind of stupid though, like looking more into it, the fact that now certain bosses just get tired. They don't die anymore. It's like if we had a game with George Washington and you could kill him. Actually, we did. Assassin's Creed 3, the DLC. George Washington became bad and you ended up killing him. I don't remember anybody going, "Oh, we can't have that. We can't have old George dying." But different countries, different ideas of the concept of freedom of speech and whatnot. Um, it is very interesting because it's going to break quest lines. That stage that they were talking about in chapter 4, I think I know what they were talking about. It's coming to me. And yeah, I can see how that stage would be rendered very easy now because the whole thing was it was the soldiers and demons fighting each other, and if you got near them, they all fought you. So the fact that now the soldiers won't fight you means they'll fight the demons, and then you can just kind of gang up on the demons and kill them. Like it made a zone that was kind of dangerous, it made it less dangerous, which is it is a change to gameplay. It is a negative change to the gameplay. So that's lame, but yeah, before I just pass it off, like yeah, that's why physical media is still good. You can turn off the internet or disable auto updates on your console of choice, PlayStation or Xbox in this case, and you can play the 1.0 one and not have to deal with that dumb shit. But I'm just more interested in what was censored than why it was censored. It wasn't where I was going for. And some of the good stuff, like the healing and the rolling, me personally, I would still play on the quote unquote censored version of the game because for anybody who's played the 1.0 and they had to deal with the horrifically slow healing and the hard knockdowns on getting knocked down, it was frustrating. Like that, the game was made exponentially more frustrating because of those issues. So the fact that they rectified that, I mean, if I play a second playthrough, I'm playing it updated. So what? I can't kill the fucking Ming Emperor anymore. Whatever. I can at least heal in combat now. Thank God. But yeah, I said a lot, so I'll pass it to anybody who wants to take it. Just very interesting censorship. Not what I thought was going to be censored when you brought this article up.
Yeah, that's pretty much why I brought it up because it was a different type of censorship. Because I do know that we've experienced quite a few like things that were subtly censored in games. Like Pokemon is notorious for that, where certain poses that trainers have or Pokemon have, they had to change them because they were deemed controversial or like certain items that they would hold in their hands or whatever. I think one of which was like the sailor trainer that you fight, he did this gesture of him holding his bicep, which in America it means like up yours or something like
Oh
that.
yes, I
Yeah,
remember
it's kind
that.
of like
Yeah,
a
like go fuck
derogatory.
yourself, up yours. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think another one was also the Pokemon Needle Queen, where like it had a pose in other regions where it looked like it was like cupping its breasts or something like that, which they then changed that to another type of gesture. Um, so yeah, I've noticed that there's always been like censorships now with the internet being so prominent and being able to like dialogue with other people within other countries and also like with YouTube. There's a lot of information as to like different aspects of how games are played in different regions. Um, I also remembered uh, which I believe we all caught on ourselves, there was a certain point within the Monster Hunter series where you could not kill a Kelby. Like you can knock it down, but you couldn't kill it until like recent games. And I was like, oh, this is a change. I still don't know as to why that is, but I did notice the change, and I was like really shocked about it or whatnot.
You're talking about the Kelbies?
Yeah, the Kelbys.
I think it was because it's the same thing, like activists, because of Kelbies are deers and deers are peaceful animals. So it was the violence against a peaceful animal like a deer or something along those lines.
Okay, so I'm guessing because it kind of resembles an actual animal in the real world, we couldn't like kill it because I mean the argument I would have said was like, well, popos were pretty docile as well as like other creatures within the Monster Hunter world, but we were able to like kill them and gut them or whatever. But that would make a lot of sense.
Hmm.
They also probably just looked cute in like the world of Monster Hunters. There aren't a lot of cute monsters. Kelby was kind of the closest thing you get to a cute monster. Nobody gave a shit about Mosswine or Popo or the fucking the snow elk looking one with the antlers. Nobody gave a shit
And
about them. But
Tekkas.
yeah, but Kelby looked cute, so don't kill the Kelby.
Yeah, that is a fair point. But yeah, that's the reason why I did, bring up this article to you guys, simply because it was a censorship that was, it's unreasonable, but reasonable at the same time, because again, as far as I've been playing games, this based upon whatever region the game came from or was going to, they made certain adjustments to that game to fit whatever like religious views or political views to kind of match and kind of fit the mold within that region.
But it is weird because this game isn't in China. It's
Yeah,
not. It doesn't have a publisher, but it's being censored to fit, I guess, Chinese cultural values. But it's not even available to be played in the country that's having a problem with it. But
yeah, that's
yeah,
also weird as well. And then just the whole dynamic of like the coin toss, like, are you willing to uh pretty much put your thoughts aside of the censorship for the gaming mechanics, or are you willing to pretty much bite the bullet and just say like, hey, I am going to play this in its original form, and I'm going to sacrifice those new mechanics. So I also enjoyed that dynamic of the article as well, because I'm pretty sure there's some people that's like, well, damn, okay, I know some things are definitely going to change that I don't like. However, they're giving me quality of life changes, which allows me to be able to become a more formidable player versus like things that are happening in the story. And I'm pretty sure there's a people that are like vice versa to that, where it's like, no, hell no, I like it in its prime form. I'll take the game as is in terms of what it originally came out as, and I don't mind getting the hard knockdowns, and I don't mind, taking the slow potion animations. I'll take that over, you know, basically skewering the game to their eyes. So that's, yeah, it was like those two dynamics. But I said a lot. You guys were actually supposed to talk more about it, but whoever's next can go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't know if I have a lot to add, honestly. This is definitely just an example of politics and culture kind of seeping its way into decisions, creative decisions for video games. To me, on a personal level, it's inconsequential. I don't care, even if it was an American thing. Like Gunnar mentioned, the whole Assassin's Creed 3 thing with George Washington. I don't care. Like it doesn't. If they had took that out of the game because some patriotic Americans were like, "No, you can't do that. That's a bad look on our first president," and blah blah blah. I would have been like, "I don't care." Just like I don't care about this particular thing. Not that I don't care about Chinese culture. I think that's fine if they want to preserve it. I think that's up to them if they want to do that. Um, so I'm fine with it. I'm more interested in like nerfing the difficulty of enemies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I love that, but that's a case by case because there are some situations where a nerf needs to happen. Like if they could have nerfed the Yellow Devil in Mega Man 2 or Mega Man 1, I don't think I'd be against that nerf because that shit was retarded. Um, so that particular portion of it, it's going to be a case by case. I haven't played the game yet, so I can't vouch for or against it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Generally speaking, I tend to want more of a challenge out of my games, so I would be against it, but I could see an argument for it, depending on why a particular enemy is too difficult, right? There could be an unintentional mechanic or unintentional behavior exhibited by the boss, which is why they want to nerf it. So I can understand that because it doesn't fit the desired difficulty level of the original designers. So I can understand why they might want to why they might want to why they might want to adjust. I could say that, I promise. Why they might want to adjust difficulty for certain enemies versus
yeah.
adjusting it because people are crying about it. Right? Those are two very different things.
Yeah.
If it's the latter, then obviously I'm against it. I don't think um, any media should pander to a vocal minority. I don't ever think that's a good idea. So that's kind of where I stand with it. I do want to play Wuchang. I don't have the Souls itch right now, but I do want to play that. I was interested in it ever since I think 2 years ago when they first revealed it, or at least when I first saw it. So it's right up there with Liza P and Lords of the Fallen. These are games that I haven't yet played, but again, I have to be in the mood to jump into a Souls-like game. Uh, Elden Ring kind of satiated my appetite for a while. That game came out 2 years ago, and I'm chilling. I'm good. Um, so we'll see. Maybe I'll get it later this year. It launched at $50, which is a great price point.
Hmm.
And if I can get it for even less on like a Black Friday or something like that, that'd be even better. So, excuse me. Yeah, it's kind of my initial stance. We could keep talking about it. I might have more to say as we continue on.
All right. What say you, Wolf?
Could give a rat's ass. I don't care. I don't like it. This doesn't affect me. And Kong said it. Kong said what I would have wrapped up from what you guys said. I respect other people's cultures. That's fine by me. If you want to take it offensive because you can kill a video game allows you to kill historical vicars of your culture, that's understandable. You know, to each his own. But for me, it's much like Kong said, it's non-consequential to me. So I can, I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is, and it does solidify the point of politics will forever, or it's now we're in a day and age now where politics is going to be a leading factor in how our video games are played. Um, in that regard, I do believe that it is okay to nerf enemies or bosses as long as it doesn't necessarily. You're not looking to take away the challenge from the boss or the enemy, but also sometimes there are enemies in video games that can have very dominating properties um, or habits that your major player base isn't going to grasp or isn't going to take the time to grasp. And people who are willing to deal with such difficulties is not on the same player count as those who aren't. So if you decide to nerf an enemy or a boss correctly, you can find a good balance between both, where that enemy can still be a challenge to the players looking for a challenge, but also be a little bit more manageable to those who are either A, grasping the game, or B, doesn't really care for the challenge. And I think it's important to take both into consideration because you do have to satisfy both player base. Um, but more or less, the player base that doesn't want the challenge will usually outnumber the player base that does. Um, so I don't disagree with nerfing of the enemies per se. Just don't kill the essence of the game. If that's what people loved about your game, respect it and just find a way to balance out, other people who want to play it, I guess. But at the same time, it's interesting that you don't kill the boss. Instead, they like go into a collapse state. It would have been more interesting to see than if it was developed that way and released that way than necessarily it taking a backlash and then they had to go in and then redesign that aspect of the game. But like I said, for me, it's neither here nor there. Um, it's not a game that I'm gonna play anyways. So for me, it's not. And even if it was American-based culture that people were complaining about, like in the end of the day, it's done for a reason. It's just the creator's way of expressing their form of art, and I'm not gonna be the one to sit here and go to Twitter or X.com and bitch about it. I don't got time for that.
Yeah,
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 I don't got time for all that.
I could see what you're saying. I think one of the alarming things about this article is that people like the people at hand with that they spoke about within this article, it doesn't seem like they're actually complaining about the nerf of the game per se. I think they're complaining about the enemies that are tied to a specific plot, which ultimately, because they change the properties of those enemies, in which that you can't kill them or they can't do anything to you, change, which kind of like connects to some of the game being nerfed, if that makes any sense. Like I didn't I they mentioned that, okay, some bosses, some
Yeah,
enemies were
it's
nerfed, but
indirect. It's an
yeah,
indirect nerf.
that's what I was trying to say, that it's
Mhm.
indirect. So I found that like really interesting, and like someone who not only plays the game, like I always prioritize gameplay. Gameplay is the ingredients that's most important, but I feel as though like the plot is also like the icing on the cake for me, because I do try to like delve deep into plots when it comes to games that have like very complex stories. I mean, it doesn't have to be complex, but just games that have very interesting storylines. Like typically the Souls games where there's story there, but there's also like enough ambiguity for you to kind of like process your own defining moments of certain things that they're leaving out, and kind of fill in the gaps. Um, it seems here like, I don't know if they followed the same suit, but it seems like the enemies that you can't kill are very pivotal to the story, hence why you're supposed to kill them, or why you did kill them in the
So,
previous build. I'm not sure. So
so I think what they're talking about is there's a part where you storm, not storm, but you go into the Imperial Palace, and there are Ming soldiers, so soldiers from the Emperor of Ming at the time, and they were enemy types. They would, like any other Souls enemy, they saw you, they targeted you, you fought them, they dropped items, blah blah blah. They were an enemy type. From here, it looks like they will now no longer attack you, and they can't be killed. So there's a part in the stage where you fight predominantly that enemy. Like
okay.
that is the enemy type. So I guess I'll see it whenever I watch you play, or if I do another playthrough. From my understanding, if I'm understanding it correctly, you will just now be able to walk through that area and nothing will attack you until you get to the boss.
Mm,
That's stupid. That's dumb.
So
Just change
that's
the
my
enemy.
understanding. Yeah.
Just change the type of enemy it is. Use a little creativity. Create. I don't know, regular, standard, generic foot soldiers, and
Yeah, they could have done that. Like instead of
yeah,
being Ming soldiers, they could have been bandits and give them the same
yeah,
stats as the Ming soldiers, but they're dressed in raggedy clothes and they yell at you in Chinese.
right.
Um,
but wouldn't
But to
that
but
kind
that's
of
not.
literally
alter the
give,
story altogether? Like, I guess the logic would be, well, why would these bandits be in the Imperial Palace?
I mean, the story is kind of fucked with that alteration, regardless.
Okay,
So
okay,
at that point, you're just
yeah,
adding the gameplay back that they took away because they made an enemy type no longer attack you. So it's
yeah.
like you get your gameplay back now, which I think more people would care about. But I wanted to bring up a curious thing because I remember another game that had this kind of thing where you would fight an enemy and you would beat them, but they wouldn't die. They would just like fall down and rest. And this is so random, and I only saw it because I watched Angry Video Game Nerd, for those that know, old school like YouTuber that does old games, and he talked about it. And I had to look it up while you guys were talking. So there's a game called Jackie Chan Fists of Fire. I think came out on like the the Sega Genesis or the Sega. This was when Mortal Kombat style games were super like popular and being
okay.
emulated. The whole like we're gonna have actors do moves and then digitize them in the game. So in that game, Jackie Chan was the boss, and you could beat Jackie Chan, but he would never fall on the floor. He would always like lay down on the floor, or he would fall and then get right back up and give you a thumbs up. And that's because Jackie Chan's a Chinese cultural icon. they're not going to have him depicted, and he probably didn't want it himself, to be depicted as getting his ass kicked, even in this no-name fucking video game. So just a little random tidbit. You guys can look it up. It's basically a Mortal Kombat clone. That's what it is. It's nothing special. The only special thing is that Jackie Chan was the boss. There were 3 versions of Jackie Chan in that game that all fought slightly different, but you could never beat him. You would always get his HP to 0. He would like fall on the floor and either like rest or just like give you a thumbs up, like you did good, kid. So just a little random thing. It's not the point of it is it's not the first time that's been done. Funny enough. So, but the other point I wanted to bring up is I think Wolf mentioned like nerfing bosses that are overtuned and how that's not a bad thing. I have to agree. I don't think scaling a boss that's overtuned is a bad thing. And I know before we started recording, we talked about Balteus from Armored Core 5
Mm-hmm.
and how when that boss was originally conceived in 1.0, he was tough as balls. He was incredibly hard. I think he was overtuned. He was way too overtuned to where you were at that stage in the game. And what I mean by that is you only had so many parts and you only had so many weapons at that stage in the game. So it was really down to your gameplay, and if the vast majority of your player base is having difficulty with a boss that I would consider not even mid game, let alone end game, but kind of like a beginning early game boss, let's not say beginning, an early game boss, that means that boss is overtuned. If Balteus was at the end of the game where you can have all of the armor pieces, all of the engine parts, the thruster parts, and the weapons, he would be fine because you have the whole arsenal at your disposal at that point. But where Balteus was in the game, he was he was a little bit overtuned for where you were in the game. So I beat him when he was like that. Most of us that played the game beat him when he was at that stage,
Mm-hmm.
but I can sit here even though I did beat him and admit he was overtuned. So it was maybe better for the overall health of the game that he was nerfed the way he was.
Well,
So
yeah.
I don't think it's always a bad thing.
No, it's not always a bad thing at all. Like, there's always there always has to be an intention behind why things are done, and I'm pretty sure we can definitely, like, objectively speaking, we can definitely look back at Balteus and say yes, he was absolutely overtuned. But my concern when it comes to those types of games is that the majority of people, I mean, realistically speaking, are not going to. There's been a correlation where there's a lot of people who just couldn't get past like the first boss in those particular games. So it's like, you know, how do we go around this? Because at the end of the day, companies are going to try to they want to make money, so they want to appease the fan base, which has the larger margin. So if the majority of fans are gonna be like, this is too hard, they're going to bend the knee just to maintain the money, right? But my concern is about these particular games is that they're supposed to be hard. So it's like, when do they kind of determine like, oh, this is actually overtuned? Are they doing it because they themselves kind of put themselves in the chair and it's like, this is overtuned, or is it just because the masses are saying it, not the actual players who dive deep into these games and like finish them from soup to nuts? I'm talking about like the people who are interested in playing the game, but then they realize that, okay, the beginning portion is too hard, and they kind of make a big stink about it. That's my concern about it. If that makes any sense.
So you're saying
Uh,
that you're trying to differentiate players who try, but then realize that it is a difficult boss versus players who aren't really trying. They just lost, so they feel like they're entitled to complain about it being a difficult boss.
Correct. Like, perfect example, I would say Street Fighter 4, right? Like, a lot of people were complaining about Ryu. Oh, he's too strong. He's too this. He's too that. So like the majority, because the majority complained, they nerfed him to shit to the point where he was practically almost unplayable. You know, whereas like us who actually dive deep into like the game, we know how to answer Ryu. We know like, okay, typically this Dragon Punch is coming. Here are the properties. Here's how I answer that. You know, but because the majority complained about him being a tough opponent, they like nerfed him. So it's like, were you guys actually playing the game, or were y'all just like complaining because you got into one minor hurdle, and decided, oh, I'm just gonna bitch and they're gonna make the changes for me? So, I mean, that's just the example I could have thought of right off the bat.
Well, I think that situation is different than Balteus and Wuchang, because those games are single player games. The Street Fighter thing, I think that's we're gonna release a character, and we know what he does on paper, but
Mm-hmm.
there's an element of seeing how the community responds to him and what the community comes up with and goes, oh wow, okay, well, on paper that didn't look like it would be so overpowered, but in practice it is. So we're gonna have to readjust some stuff. Like maybe with Ryu, things looked good on paper, but then when it was in the hands of the masses, top players, mid players, low level players, they were like, "Oh wow, this series of thing that Ryu can do, that's a bit much." So we're gonna have to change some things around. But in the case of a single player game like Wu Chang or Armored Core, there is no multiplayer element. It is you versus an NPC, and in the case of Armored Core, it's what resources do you have when you get up to Balteus, and like how can you make use of those resources against him? And in the case of Balteus, you just didn't have much. I think he was like the third, I want to say maybe the third boss you fought,
Yeah,
and that's very early in the game. You fought the helicopter, the weird
the Juggernaut, I believe it was called, or
yeah,
something.
which you had an NPC helping you for the first half of that fight, and then you're thrusted into Balteus, who's a huge difficulty spike compared to what you were dealing with at that point. The helicopter being your first difficulty spike because you couldn't customize your AC. You had what you had. And Balteus was a lot of it was kind of the same. You
Mm-hmm.
had only so many weapons, so many parts, so many components, and it was a bit much. So I think in your not to like poo poo your example. I just think in the case of Ryu or a fighting game character, it's different than a single player mega boss in a Souls like game. It's different, which is why I'm more okay with like something like Beltarius. That's his name. Just
I'll
Balteus.
take this.
Balteus.
Okay.
There you go. Okay. Oof. It's for TLDR. I have a headache, so it's like my thoughts are scrambled.
Mm-hmm.
Um, somebody like him being um nerfed has such a bad connotation with it. Being rebalanced for where you are in the game, I think is a different scenario than Ryu in a fighting game. I'm
No.
I'm more okay with the Balteus. Holy
Mm-hmm.
shit, Balteus as compared to Ryu, because Ryu is just like, let's see what the community does, as opposed to this is what we think the boss at this stage should be doing. He's doing a bit too much. Let's tune him a little bit.
No, I get what you're saying. I guess what I'm trying to articulate is, how do they differentiate between like, okay, because we can, again, we
They
can
don't.
agree.
The answer
Okay.
is they don't.
Okay.
There's no real way to do that unless you poll every player who's ever played the game,
Well,
and you
yeah.
have to hope that every player takes the survey, and then you have to hire people to study the data to feed back to the developers and the directors, and they're not doing all that. That's not happening. It's very easy to just kind of look at broad information, social media posts, upvoting. Like these are metrics that are very easy and quick to measure in order to make informed decisions as to where they need to make changes. Um, here's a bitter truth that you're just gonna have to accept. The old way that games used to be designed is dead. It's We are not getting that back unless you play old games.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
The demands of modern gamers is that games respect their time, right? And that's going to vary from person to person. If we use Gunner as an example, I don't think Gunner's a bad player at all, but he does have his tolerance is a lot lower than it was 15 years ago for difficulty in video,
Yeah.
20 years ago for difficulty in video games. My tolerance has lowered even, not to the same degree, but definitely there, I'm less accepting of bullcrap for some sort of gamer credit to say that I beat something that's, you know, difficult. I'm kind of over that, right?
Mm.
And for other people, it's like it's what I'm saying plus more. Like it's like I'm over that. I've never was on that boat, and I'm never gonna be on that boat. And if you don't make changes to the game, I'm gonna bitch about it. I'm going to review bomb your game. I'm gonna talk shit about it. If I'm an influencer, you don't want that, right? And so unfortunately, the developers have to kind of cater to the demands of the new age gamer, and that's why we see tutorials galore. That's why everything is handholdy. That's why the characters talk to themselves and feed you clues because you're too stupid to figure it out yourself because they're
Hmm.
not interested in your experience because you're not your experience, but your expectation or my expectation in
Because
video games because we are the minority.
yeah, yeah.
And it's really that's where we're at, and so most games are going to kind of be this way. And Souls games, honestly, while they're challenging, they're not the hardest games in history.
No.
They don't
Yeah.
hold a candle to shit that we played back in the day on Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis and Nintendo. Like they hell, you could go to PlayStation. I just finished Ninja on PlayStation. That game was hard as fuck. But why was it hard? It was hard because the clunky, because the camera was shit, because the game was just super cheap in some of the traps and where they placed it, and like the save points were super delayed, so I had to like execute these perfect jumps and all the combat and not randomly fall over an invisible rock. Like it's just like it's difficult because it's just like it's unfair. And so we've grown up kind of expecting that, and we take pride in it. As stupid as it sounds, we take pride in, yeah, I beat this game, the super hard game, I beat it or whatever. We could sit here and deny it, but like we either do that or we've done that in the past. And looking back, it's kind of silly. I still get it, but like I think it's silly. And so those expectations are just gone for me. If I want that kind of experience, I will go back and play an older.
No,
That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
which
I,
makes a lot of
I
sense.
get
But
that.
the thing is, okay. So here's my thing, right? And everything you said absolutely makes a lot of sense. I agree. Like these current games are not being made for us or our generation back in the days or whatnot. I think the difference is that those games that were made back in the day, the reason why they were the products that they were was due to the limitations that they had back in those days. And also, I don't think that I don't think that the difficulty that was within those games were intentional. Whereas you have Souls games that came out where their sole intention was to be difficult. So it's like, I can understand people not saying that you can't make complaints in a Souls game because there are just some things that are absolutely cheap and like they're unfair. There's a certain aspect that just doesn't make any sense. It's not. I wouldn't constitute them as difficulty. It's more so like maybe an oversight on the developer's end that is like, well, this is not difficult. This is more so on the cheap end or like some type of code that's messed up. Like let's say a boss that is skipping frames or whatever, right? Like, but overall, the overall intent, at least from me playing Souls games, is to play a game that has some type of difficulty or like the term that we've found on a video, friction. You know, so it just sucks.
We did not find we did not coin that term.
I didn't say we coined it. I said we found it in a video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you meant found as founder, as
No, no,
like
no, no, no,
we were
no.
the,
We
we were the
found it in a.
pioneers of that
No,
term.
no, no. We found it in a
Okay,
video.
so we
Yeah.
discovered it
Yeah,
in a different
yeah,
video.
not coined. I would have said coined,
Okay, got it.
but yeah, the intent behind those games like Ninja Gaiden, the intent behind the Souls games are to be difficult. So if players aren't looking for that, that's just the basis of the game, then you shouldn't be necessarily playing those. But I do understand on the other hand, from the business perspective, like, we want to make money. We don't care about the minority. Y'all only giving me X amount of dollars, whereas the majority who wants to come into this franchise will give us money by the boatload. So I get it. You know, I definitely get your point on that.
Well, also funny enough, I think a more
So what is
modern.
your what is? I'm sorry, Gutter. What is your? Because I don't feel like I heard you started. Well, my thing is, and I don't really. I don't know if I heard. I don't know if you said it and I missed it, or if you never got to that point.
No, it was
So
okay.
what is your contention?
No,
With what I said?
there's no contention with what you're saying. I'm just pretty much piggybacking on what you're saying and just giving a point. Like, well, these games were intended to be this way. Then maybe if it's too difficult for you, then you shouldn't be playing. It's just that because the majority of people saturate, like, they're introduced to the Souls games, they saturate it to the point where it's like, well, they're not that good. And I mean, let's be honest. There's like a majority, a wide percentage of people who are just not good in the Souls games who complains, and then they kind of like bend the knee to accommodate
Okay.
those masses.
Well, I concede with your point of those games in the past were not for those who complained about it then or now. I agree with you, but would you agree that that is vice versa to you now, where it's like, well, games are just not for you anymore. They're for the casual gamer. Are you okay with that?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, I'm
that's
absolutely
basically what
okay.
you're saying.
I'm absolutely okay with that because I,
All right.
I I agree with your point that, you know, the majority rules, like that's pretty much what it is. The majority rules when it comes to money. Period. Like, if majority says, like, okay, well, we don't like this, you need to take it out, and it's tied behind your bank account and you're going to lose money potentially because of it, yeah, you best believe that companies are going to do what the majority says. It's just unfortunate that the majority doesn't side with my perspective on those types of games. Not saying that not saying that bosses should not be nerfed, but I believe that they should be nerfed within reason. Because personally,
The
when
only problem with your point is that it's hard to measure what that actually means because the difficulty is going to vary greatly from player to player, especially depending on skill level and general experience. So for
yeah,
your reasoning, your expectation, I think is just unrealistic. It's impossible to do effectively.
I
And I
mean,
know Gunnar had a point, so I don't want to like take
yeah,
Yeah,
go
well,
ahead.
no, no, that it works with what you just said. I think another modern way they can tell, like if over their player base is having issues with the boss, is looking at the trophy data. Um, if you remember looking at, again, I'll bring up Armor Core. Um, there was I have no numbers. I'm just gonna throw out numbers for the sake of argument. Let's say 50% of the player or 90% of the player base beat the helicopter. Then 80% of the player base beat the behemoth monster on top of the bridge, the dam. Then all of a sudden Bolteus comes out. They're looking at the trophy data and it goes from 80% to 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Got past both. Like, okay, if I'm a developer and I'm looking at the Steam trophy data, the PlayStation trophy data, the Xbox trophy data, and I'm seeing that there is a huge drop off in the amount of people earning the beat bolt or beat chapter 3 boss trophy, there's something wrong with there's something wrong with this boss. So you know, I don't know if they do look at that information, but I know a lot of players look at that information was like, wow, Balteus really was a wall for a lot of people because the amount of people acquiring that trophy was significantly lower compared to the first two bosses. And then once they tuned Balteus down, you saw the amount of people earning that trophy steadily rise. So I think that's a modern way they can look at the health of their game. It's like how many people are earning these trophies, aka how many people are progressing through our game and beating it. And when you see a sharp decline in that, yeah, it might be time to take a look at like why can't people get this trophy? What's going on here? So yeah, just a little interesting factoid about the trophies. A lot of us don't care about them. It's just like me. I was like, I don't give a fuck about trophies, but they can be a good indicator in seeing like how many people are beating the boss. You know, are quote unquote enough of the community beating it in a healthy, timely basis, and you know, we can do that with trophy information now.
Yeah, I think there's also, unfortunately, a lot of variables to consider as well. Like, you have to take into account for the people that are playing because it was a new buzz, and then they get to a point where they tried the boss a few times and they're like, you know what, I'm not playing this anymore, or just the folks who have TikTok brain and they got up to that boss and then it's like, well, a new game came out, so they kind of pivot away. So I mean, yeah, it's definitely I can see where it definitely can be set as a gauge to determine like vulnerability with said like wall or said boss. But I think there's also like a lot of other data to consider within those trophies. Uh, at least I would think so.
Maybe I'm just saying from like a visual perspective, like
Mm-hmm.
to see such a huge like drop off in the amount of people earning a trophy, which is a relatively early trophy. This isn't like the final boss of one of the endings of Armored Core. It's just like, wow, what's going on that people are having difficulties earning this trophy? So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you're not wrong. It could be people that gave up on the game, got bored of it, thinks it sucks. It's early enough that if you're playing on Steam and you get to Balteus, it's within the 24-hour return window. So sure, there's a percentage of that, but I think the trophy example is a a reliable enough metric. And obviously, From Software, the developers of AC5, they have other data that they can use
Yeah.
to determine like if this boss is a bit too much or not, or whatnot.
Yeah. I think what was the other one? Cell 240. I think they also nerfed. If I'm not mistaken, it was the super red and white like Gundam type style.
Oh, the one you fought
That
in like the big water, like the lake area.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that motherfucker was a pain in the ass too. Like,
He definitely was. Yeah, he definitely was. But I definitely get you gentlemen's point about like the times have changed. Games are not really made for me. It's either I succumb to whatever the new wave is, or just play older games.
yeah, I mean yeah, that's kind of the TLDR of this whole episode. Is interesting censorship and um we live in this isn't the PlayStation 2 era and down where a game came out and a boss was like fucking crazy overtuned. Well, either get good or watch someone else beat it. I remember I could never beat the final boss in Orphan, like that launch game for PlayStation 2. I could never beat the final boss because he was just incredibly difficult. Maybe now I could that I'm older, but back when I was playing that game, I was like, I can't beat this guy. This guy's and I obviously beat everything up to him because I got to the final boss, but he was just to my younger brain at the time, he was just too much. And I wasn't the only one who shared that sentiment because a lot of people talk about Orphan's final boss being, if you look at top 10 hard bosses of PS2 era, in some lists he shows up. It's like, okay, so it's not just me, but this was the PS2. Couldn't do shit. There was no update. There wasn't an Orphan 2 or an Orphan, Orphan Extreme Edition. So
Yeah,
either beat him or watch somebody that was able to. But now you can update games on the fly and change things. So for good and for bad, that it's gonna happen.
true, true. I definitely do remember some difficult games and like difficult parts in games. Like I would say for me, a real difficult game that I had a hard time with was the Lion King on the Sega Genesis. That game was ridiculously hard. Like
That game was stupid hard. I never play that game ever again.
that game was hard.
I've heard about that game. I've seen.
That game was.
A lot of the Disney games were pretty
When you
hard.
say, was it like, good? Good?
Like Monster Hunter, tasty.
Tasty.
Was like this console cost money. That's what it was.
And you would get your ass whipped because you didn't pay for it.
Because I didn't pay for it. What do you know? Like I said,
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
I heard it was pretty unforgiving, and it's such a setup. You're a kid, you watch Lion King, it's a great movie.
Yo, I was like, Simba is the man. I
Yeah,
really like, like I really I want a chance of beating Mufasa myself. Please. I couldn't get
it's
past
like,
the
oh,
hyenas.
they made a video game. Ah, they made a video game. I'll do real good in school. I'll get straight A's all day, and then you get it, and you're getting your ass whooped by a
I was like,
zebra, and
oh,
it's like,
I'm done. I was like, fuck these large cats. I'm done. I am over this.
It's like,
Well, the other thing to note too is like during this time, the development mentality was different. Like they were coming off of arcade scenes, and the whole idea
that's
behind the
true.
arcade was
Take
to
your
snatch
money.
quarters, right? To take as many quarters as possible, which is why like level 3 in almost any fucking game back then was fucking incredibly hard because level 3 was the point where you gave the player enough to enjoy the game, but now it's like now we're gonna make you work for it, and now we're gonna extract money out of you because now we're gonna make this level 3, level 4 extra hard to kind of maximize the profitability. So that same mentality carried its way over to console gaming, where okay, well, this game technically, if you do everything perfectly, is a 2-hour game or it's an hour game.
True.
So we have to stretch the time to make people feel like it's worth paying 60, 70, $80 back then when game prices were not regulated and streamlined. That was their solution. Was it a good solution? I don't think so, but it's the solution that they came up with, and it's a solution that we dealt with, and it was profitable enough for them, for the industry to exist and thrive and continue to grow into modern day. So things have changed. Right now, developers of modern day understand how like the culture has changed in general, and it's affected how games are developed, just like how movies are developed now versus 20 years ago. Like it's just a different mentality, different expectations, and also the business aspect where investors and you know um, executives have expectations of a healthy profit turnover. And so in order to do that, you're going to have to do things that might dilute or uh, disintegrate the quality of the game. Where that's why we see like more and more AAA games adopt, uh, mobile game aspects, where it's like there's a season pass and there's like free to play options, and then there's like buyable skins and all this other stuff. Like that's in the game, not to enhance the experience, but to enhance profitability and to exploit human weakness. Which is why I don't like modern games, and I don't play a lot of these modern games because they're not for me, and I understand that, and I've accepted it. So that's why I buy maybe 2 games a year now, or if I do buy games, it's old games. I'm buying PS2 or Xbox original games or PS1 games. So
yep.
that's it.
That reminds me, I was playing. This is a while ago now. I was playing Altered Beast, and I back when my father had a Sega Genesis, I could never beat Altered Beast. Level 3, I think it was level 3. And I just couldn't beat it. I'm like, God, but it was so cool. Like you play as some Greek dude and turns into a wolf, and then one's a bird. And I bought it on like PlayStation because they ported it over to PlayStation, and like I beat it in like 10 minutes. I was like, oh my God, I only had like one level after this, and I was like, shit, I thought this game was 60 hours long. And I'm like, so it's just a story that a situation that you reminded me of. I'm like, yeah, man, these games were they were, but that's how they did length. That they didn't have the technology and the budgets to make 60-hour side-scrolling beat 'em up games.
Yeah.
So yeah, level 3 was a bitch, and
Level 3 is always a bitch. You can play any game from back then, and I promise you, it's either level 2 if they're feeling froggy and they're like, "Fuck you, level 2." but it's more often level 3. Level 3 is just like impossible unless they're playing Ghouls and Ghosts, which is that game is just
That game was built impossible.
it was
Yeah,
built to
that
piss
that
you off.
that was definitely an
Yeah.
intentional like difficult game to play.
It and Contra.
Mm.
Contra I can play now, but when I was younger, I couldn't play Contra. I couldn't do it.
Well, which one
All
particularly?
of them.
Pick one. What do you mean? Which
Oh,
one?
because Super Contra was I would say was more like the Super Nintendo like versions of the games were more like tolerable from what I've seen. Like Super Contra, Super Ghouls and Ghosts. Um, what was the other one?
But yeah, because the quality, like they understood that. Think about it. Like Super Nintendo, first of all, the technology was improving. That's number one. Number
Mm-hmm.
two, the mentality was changing, right? Because they were getting this is further away from the arcade scene,
Mm-hmm.
and the mid '90s, early to we're gonna say closer to the mid '90s. Super Nintendo was
Yeah.
popping, right?
Yeah.
Like '92 to '95 or something like that.
Yep.
So, you saw the quality in these games changing, and they found a way to extend gameplay with RPGs. RPGs were huge because I could get a 50, 60 hour game on the fucking Super Nintendo. That was like unheard of. Or games
Hmm.
like Legend of Zelda, the
Hmm.
fucking mind blowing, right? That's why those games are like timeless classics. Whereas something like Super Castlevania 4, it was just like you could beat that shit in under an hour if you know what you were doing.
Yeah.
Um, and because the controls were better, the technology was better, the design philosophy was better. That game is way easier, way more playable than Castlevania 3. Fuck that game, right? That game was hard as balls for no reason. Um, it is, bro. I picked the Alucard path, which was not a good idea. Um,
It
and so
was
that
hard. It was hard. It was definitely
hell
difficult.
yeah, it was hard. If you say anything other than yes, I agree, bro, I don't know what you're smoking. You're a masochist at that point. There's no denying it. Um, but yeah,
uh,
that's where we're at. And like to add some other examples to like politics and games, and like not just politics, like government politics and country politics, but also just people politics, right? Gunnar mentioned that Jackie Chan game. There was other examples of like I forget which wrestling game it was, but there was a wrestling game in the 2000s that was being promoted, and apparently Triple H, the wrestler, made it so. This isn't confirmed. This is like hearsay, but I could believe it. He didn't want any of the promotional stuff to show him in any vulnerable state or any like losing state. Like if Triple H was to be featured in any screenshot in any promotional material, he is to be featured in a prominent, strong, winning position at all times. And so that's politics. That was him using his political power in the wrestling industry to enhance his character's image. And of course, I'm sure that had a long term effect. More people like, wow, this Triple H guy is so strong. He's so cool, right? And
mhm.
that increases to merch sales and more toy sales, et cetera, et cetera. So like, that's really what it is. So I don't blame uh, China for trying to control the perception of their culture, because we're in a culture war right now, globally. Not to make it political, but it's happening, and I don't blame them. I don't like it. I don't think they should have that kind of power. I think artists should be allowed to just kind of creatively do whatever it is that's in their hearts. But executives they're gonna bow down to whoever holds the political power, because if you hold that, then you also have an influence on money and capital and all that. So anyway, that
Yep.
was my last point that
It,
I
it
wanted to throw.
And
it all boils down to the good old dollar.
mi- mind you, even though this game is not playable in China, these people still live in China. And, China's government is what it is. I don't want to get into it. It is what it is, but they live there. So if they say they got to make this ancient historical figure not die anymore, then they got to do it.
Yeah,
And
You mean? I mean, come on. The dude is dead. The dude's been dead for thousands of years. It doesn't really matter. It's not like he's a.
Yes,
It,
it does. It does matter. To them, it does. It absolutely matters. If they heard you say that, they would absolutely like
Shut me
fight
down.
you. They would fight you tooth and nail. Like absolutely, it mattered.
Yeah, I mean, this has always been a thing since like I've been playing games. Like they would just change the name of a character because it had a negative connotation in another language. So this has always been something. I think the biggest issue is probably because of how it ties into the gameplay and the story. That I don't know how they can fix it at this juncture, but I think that's what it is because it ties into the story. The story kind of has a negative connotation associated with that portion of the gameplay. I think that's why gamers are up in arms. But ever since like I've grown to love games, there's always been a respect for each culture or each region when it came to certain aspects of a game. So I
Tell
honestly
that to
can't complain.
Capcom.
I
But
mean,
okay.
well, with Capcom, right? Wasn't there like a big stink about Dalsim? That's why they haven't had like a character from India and like or the Middle East
Well,
in a long time.
from my understanding, the game was banned in India,
It's
but
banned.
India didn't have the political uh, sway or
Clout
pull to
way, yeah.
tell Capcom, yeah, change that shit. Like they didn't have that power, or maybe they did and they didn't know how to exploit it, or I don't know. Like the
Yeah,
world was it was a different place 30 years ago, right?
yeah,
Um, but if
True.
it was a Chinese
That's
character
true.
today with Street Fighter 7 or Street Fighter 6 season 4, whatever it may be,
hmm
yeah, Capcom would have changed it for sure because well, China has global influence and they have power, and Capcom, I'm sure, and specifically the executives of Capcom don't like that book because they don't know what business looks like in 5 years and 10 years. If they're going to be doing business with those guys, if Tencent buys out Capcom, like we don't know, right? And they don't
yeah,
want to put themselves in a position where they lose money on an individual because that's what it boils down to at the end of the day. People are looking out for themselves. They could give a fuck about the art or any of that. Look how many times Capcom has hoard out their IPs to like Hollywood or to different projects that made no sense, but they were like they saw a cash opportunity and they put aside the integrity of the IP in order to make more money. It's just the way it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. When you're dealing with a country that if you upset them in any way, they can literally say, okay, your game is no longer allowed to be sold in our country, and op they occupy most of the eastern landmass.
hmm
Yeah, they're good. They're like, okay, we're not gonna step on those toes too much. We'll take the skeleton out the game. It's okay.
yeah. It's just the lay of the land. Um,
Unfortunately, but I mean, I'll just my final little bit. In the case of Wuchang, I mean, it sucks. It's stupid. I'm interested at whenever you get to play it to see how, if you decide to update the game, how it is. But I'm telling you, bro, if you ever play that game, that 1.0 healing and that 1.0 stun lock, look, Chinese Emperor can lay on the floor. That shit was fucking rough, and it was rough.
Fair
I'll
enough. Fair
I'll
enough.
take it. But yeah, that's it for me. That's it for me. Shit was rough.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, we definitely went a little bit over time, but as always, it's a fun and engaging conversation that we always have. So I appreciate you guys. With that being said, for those of you who stuck around as long as you did, listening to our banter, thank you so much. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. Comment on what side you would choose within this controversy. Are you willing to put aside certain quality of life changes within the game for a legitimate story or the original story, or would you switch it up and say to hell with that? I would like the quality of life changes, and I don't care, to Gunner's point, about the Emperor and all the other minions I could have potentially fought. Let us know in the comments. Also, follow us on all our social media platforms. If you're tuning into our video, you'll see all the platforms listed right below the article, i.e. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Discord. There's also this YouTube channel that we highly suggest that you would subscribe to, as well as the main channel where I do reviews. I also stream on that platform as well and do unboxing videos, among many other stuff as well. So, with that being said, folks, y'all have a wonderful rest of your night. Panelists, you as well. And last but certainly not least, if it ain't gaming, it ain't logical, folks. Peace.